Honeybee family, it's Nikki. I'm back. So, I have a video today on 3 masculine cards using embossing folders. We go from simple to a little bit more complicated, and I think you're going to love these techniques. We're going to start with a pretty simple one. Now, this is pattern paper and a stamp set from Honeybee Stamps from the latest collection. It has lots of fun things that really go well with cowboy cards. And then I also am going to use this barbed wire embossing folder. Now, this is going to be, you're going to be shocked at how easy this card is, but I'm also going to tell you how to do this card if you were ink blending. So if you were ink blending this card, you could create the same thing. You could do it with mixed media on the background. You just need some silhouettes stamps of something masculine. It could be cowboys, it could be plants, it could be cactus, it could be so many different things. And you're just stamping those in black on your background. So just creating some kind of interesting ink blended background. These teal, yellow, orangey colors are really a nice masculine background color. What I'm going to start with is heat embossing a sentiment in the bottom lower right corner. And that is just going to be there before we do any of the embossing folder. And then we're going to partially use that embossing folder on this. So this way I'm keeping it as a pretty flat card, and it's easy to mail and it's easy to put together. So I'm stamping this with clear ink, and then I'm going to heat emboss it. And there's a reason for that, because we're going to partially 3D emboss this panel. And if I have ink here, I could definitely smear that. This sentiment is perfect for a masculine card. It says, "I hope you're back in the saddle again soon." And I'm always looking for get well cards that work well for a guy. And I thought this would be perfect. It's masculine, it's got a cute little sentiment, and it's not just a florally get well. So that's why I chose this. Okay, so I heated it up. See how bright white that is? And now I don't have to worry about that ink smearing for our next technique. We're grabbing the embossing folder. This one is the one that says barbed wire. And I like it because it's got some spaces in between, so we're not going to lose our design in this, lose those cute little cowboys. And it's got two sides to an embossing folder. We want to put the pretty side up, so the part that is embossed is sticking up behind these little horses, and then you're pushing it in so that you'll have a raised image on the front. And if you don't know how to do that, I do have some other videos that will show you things about embossing folders and get you started. But I'm going to line this up right about at the bottom of the horses. And that's because I don't want to go over my sentiment. I want to leave a flat area. So I'm just going to line it up. And be careful to keep it in the same spot before sending it through the die cutting machine. But you leave this little tab out, and it's only going to put the pressure on the area where you're wanting that raised image. Okay, so it comes out of the embossing thing, and I'm going to show you. It's hard to see this because I'm pressing it into colors, so you're going to see me tilt it a couple different ways, and you'll see that that pattern is on the top once I open this. So you may be a little hard to see it here, but when I tilt it to the side, you can see that pattern, and we're going to make that pattern more awesome too. So key to showing up these lines is that we need to put something over them to make it really stand out, especially if you're just looking at it on camera. So I'm going to start with some black soot around the edges, and I'm doing this just to give it a more realistic look, like I really did ink blend this. I just like adding that darkness to the edges so that there's a little bit more variation in the color. And so I'll go around the whole thing with black soot just to give it a little bit of dimension, and then we're going to add the secret sauce. So we're going to be using foundry wax, and you see I've got gloves on because it does get all over your hands if you're doing this, and it's fine if that's what you want to do, but I'm going to use gloves just to not have gold all over me. And this is a wax, and so I'm just applying it over the raised area, which is why I'm using this sticky mat to hold my piece of paper flat. And then I'm going along all of the barbed wire, and I'm adding this gold foundry wax, which is called, I think the actual color is called gilded. And you can do this in layers, but the thing about foundry wax is that it goes on, and then you heat it up to set it and also give it a little bit of shine. So I'm going to add a little bit of heat, trying not to warp the paper, and just doing it on a low to get this to turn a little bit more metallic, which is really hard to see on camera. I'm going to show you a close-up of the card so you can see how it looks, and then we'll add a second layer. So let me give you a close-up photo. So see how the barbed wire is now metallic gold? It's called gilded. I did add a second layer to make that even darker, and then I added some around the edges, and I wanna show you the process of adding it around the edges, and then I'll try to zoom in on a picture of it again so that you can see how cool this looks. So I really love adding gold to the edge of a card, and you're doing this, like, in a kind of a messy fashion because you just want there to be that effect that there's kind of like a shadow or, some little extra details to your cards that are just super fun. So I'm gonna go around this whole card and I'm gonna add a little bit of gold along the edges, smearing it around the edges too, and then we'll heat that up and I'll show you. Okay, now I've got the video view, and then I'm gonna show you a still photo that it'll kind of zoom in on, and that way you can see these gold effects in a couple of different ways. I just love how it turned out. It's gonna be the perfect get well card for a guy. See what I mean along the edges? Doesn't that look so amazing? The next plate is going to be our simplest card. We're going to use the diamond plate and we are going to use a kind of matte silver. It's an actual cardstock from Altenew. And I'm going to do the full panel. This is going to be the background of our card. We're going to keep this pretty simple. It never hurts to spray a little water on the non-metallic side of your cardstock, but on this one I did not and had no trouble. So when you get this out of here, it's immediately breathtaking. And I thought, let's do at least one card that's just straight embossing folder as the background. And so basically the technique for this is try using metallic papers and different types of papers as your background for the embossing folder. You can do this with plain white, you can do it with different colors, but try different textures and things like metallic paper, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. I'm a huge fan of adding different textures to your card. And so we've got the nice metallic background texture with the embossing folder that just makes it look amazing. Then we have some texture on our little pegboard desk here. The brown on this is actually a wood type paper. It's a specialty paper, so I didn't have to ink blend that or anything. And then I've got these beautiful, like the cowboy hat and the little lasso, and we'll put a little cactus on the desk as well. And the reason that I did this kind of as a pegboard that wasn't tools is because my dad is actually more of a cowboy. And so I thought I'd put a dad, and he's always got a cowboy hat and had a little workshop by his horses. So I'm just going to do this like this is my dad's workshop. And all the amazing, lovely layers does by Honeybee just looks so good. I think it gives it so much detail and all these little different papers, just awesome. Now we're going to do the same general idea, but really step it up a notch. So I had this inspiration that came from this piece of cardstock, but I didn't want to use cardstock again in another one of my examples. So I decided that we would try to make something that was similar to this, that looked rustic and used, and maybe a little bit of that rusty component to it. So I looked through my craft room, and the closest color I had to this was Lunar Paste Guppy. It's kind of an orangey color, and so I thought, well, this can be some of that rusted through look, and I'm going to just smooth it on. And I know that Lunar Paste over metallic paper is going to work because I've tried it before. So I'm going to add this to the matte silver, and I'm just going to add it kind of randomly so that we can continue to build this little area and create more and more dimensions. So I started off with a light layer, and then I went back and added just a little bit more to each of these because I really liked the way it looked. And I just did 4 different areas on this section here just to give it some interesting look to it. So we're going to let that dry, which lunar paste dries pretty quick. I would give it an hour max. Here's where we are now. Now, you could bring in some alcohol ink and really darken this panel, but what I decided to do worked pretty well and seemed to work for the purposes that I had in mind. And that was I tried some different black inks on this to give it a little bit more depth. And I just used a small brush and came in to see what I liked. So I tried black soot first, and it definitely did darken the panel. Then I thought I would try the Catherine Pooler Midnight just to see what happened, and it's a really wet texture, and so it seemed like it was just gonna wipe off pretty easily, and so I checked it with a microfiber, and yes, it did come off. It didn't really wanna dry on my panel, so I went back and decided to use just the black soot. And I'm able to blend over the little areas of lunar paste because it's already dry. So I did add some extra depth there, and I really liked how it turned out. I did leave it to dry for a while so that I'm not rubbing things off, but you can see there's a difference from the left and the right. Now, once this dried, I'm sure if I took a cloth to it, I could wipe off some of that black ink, but I really didn't have any coming off on my hands. You could always set it with like a glaze over it if you wanted to be sure that that stayed there. The rest of this card has some interesting features and was a pretty intricate die cut card. So I wanted to show you a few things that I thought really made the card, starting with this amazing wood paper. This is from your Paper Insider and it's like a wooden paper. So I decided I'd make my toolbox out of that. And then I used a little bit of pattern paper and then kind of the focal point of my nice little rusty aluminum plating there that we made previously. Now, I used some of this matte silver for my tools as well. So I ended up doing something that I haven't done previously with little die cuts that I think really made these stand out. See how they get a little lost in the silver back there? Like, you can't see the edges of the hammer because it's metal. You've got your little screwdriver that's going to get lost and a wrench. So what I did is I die cut all of these images again. And like with the bottle down here, I used a black Copic marker to go around the edges so that I could create a shadow. So literally just a black marker. Now, I do suggest using a Copic marker or something alcohol because it's not gonna, once it dries, it's not gonna get on anything else. This is why I have on gloves because alcohol ink does not come off. That's part of its advantages and its disadvantages. It's not gonna come off on your project, but it's definitely not gonna come off your hands very easily either. So that's why I'm wearing gloves. So I just went along the edges and colored in my white piece. Now you could do the same thing by just doing black cardstock, but if you're like me, black cardstock is at a premium in my craft room. I use it a lot and it's more expensive than white paper. So I just thought I would try something different and I got great results doing it. So I just put this behind everything, and on this one, I didn't even color the whole thing because there wasn't really a purpose. And I'm offsetting my shadow to the left and down ever so slightly. So just make sure once you pick a side that's going to show your shadow that you do it consistently on the rest of the items. So I like to leave one item here to remind myself about how big I made the shadow and which direction I went so that I can line everything else up the same. So what I do is I add just a little bit of glue, not much because we've got a metallic paper here and we don't want to get a lot of glue on it, but I add a little bit just so I've got the movement and can adjust the shadow as I need. So just teeny amounts really give you some options. Okay, I want to show you a couple more tips. When putting the toolbox together, remember to not tape all of these down completely. I'm adding a smidge of tape on each end so that my toolbox is open enough to fit those die cuts in. So just put a little bit of tape on the edges, and that way your little tools will slide right in. So once you have it together, it looks so cute. And now we have that open middle. So cautiously, this is also 3 layers of paper. So I have to kind of adjust just a little bit, but you can slide it into your toolbox, which is so cool. My last tip is to set your card up before you actually glue everything down. I realized that I wanted the sentiment on the toolbox, and I was glad I hadn't glued it down to the card because that would make this even more difficult. So I'm going to gently stamp this with the stamp wheel and add happy birthday to this card because I'm always looking for masculine cards for birthdays, and I thought this would be perfect. So I'm doing it gently so that I don't, because the toolbox is raised several levels, I don't want to press too hard and make a big smudgy mess. So I'm doing it very gently, adding plenty of ink and stamping a couple times. I'm also stamping on a paper that is made out of a thin layer of wood, so it has a little bit of variation in it. So you do need to do it a couple times to get a nice image. So if you haven't done it yet, make sure you've hit the like and subscribe and tell me in comments which of these cards was your favorite. Which of these different embossing folder ideas have you tried? Are you going to try? I'm real curious to see which one resonates the most with you. So I'm putting together this final card and I'm going to show you these final pictures. I just love how this one turned out. I think this one's my favorite, but I'm not sure. I really like all of them, so I'm curious to hear what you think in the comments. Let me show you some final pictures up close so that you can see all of these details. And in case you forgot, I'm Nikki of Nikki Hearts Cards. You can find me here on YouTube, and if you love embossing folders, I have so many fun videos for you that you must check out. So I hope to see you soon. Have a great day. Bye.